course, the pandemic shut down everything for all of us.
As well.
And this allows us to connect with each other, you know, in ways we wouldn't otherwise be able to had the pandemic not happened. So I guess we'll take the little tiny good things along with everything else we're dealing with. These poems are from, this is my second book, and it's a book that is largely a kind of memoir in poetic form, and dealing with, you know, issues, growing up stuff, of course, and, you know, love and family, you know, the whole mess. So I'm gonna read 6 poems, and it should be about 15 minutes, not too long. So, and we'll see what you guys think. Okay. These poems also oscillate, the particular poems that I'm going to read, between where I grew up, which was Albuquerque, New Mexico, and where I live now, which is Vermont. And place is kind of important in them, so that's why I'm sharing that with you guys. Okay. Now I'm going to figure out, since I had this configured another way, I got to put the glasses on. Okay. Fireworks, Albuquerque. Summer evenings on our street, the dads nursed warm cans of hams, exchanging a syllable now and then, casually supervising us kids, setting off cherry bombs or stinky snakes, while the moms appeared in lit doorways as they swiped bugs with a wet dish towel, a baby slung on a shoulder, and yelled or begged for us to stop hitting our brothers or let our sisters play, then disappeared behind kitchen curtains into a foreign country. We thought we knew everything, that the dads spent midnights banging things around in garages or leaning against a Chevy half-ton on blocks in the front yard, smoking and killing time until the moms put us to bed, or until moonrise enticed them to laugh and curl into the dad's arms long after we were supposed to be asleep. Those warm, lingering dusks, the dads lounged on sidewalks like lions staking out their savanna, eyes on us, but not on us. We ran into the street, trailing sparklers, whooshing our arms like Ferris wheels in the same motion that their dad fists made circles that crushed hissing empties. When Mr. H let slip between swigs that Mrs. H was so clumsy, she broke her arm falling through the living room window. The other dads, suddenly quiet, squinted at stars popping out and spat into the gutter. Conjured from nowhere and all business, the moms, with one swift stroke of biscuit-dusted arms, whisked us eavesdroppers back into the street, where we twirled into the coming night, our sparklers shooting fire we thought would save us. We flew and flopped on the still warm asphalt until a dust devil of moths beat against porch lights, flickering on one by one. Those fluttering deaths meant nothing to us. This next poem is called Alchemy, and November in Vermont is a season where it's all of the colors sort of collude into various kinds of gray. So there's a lot about mixing colors in this. Alchemy. November's the aging queen of gray, no single hue. Her palette mixes pearl residue of June, the cobalt vein in your wrist, ripe thimbleberries, alizarin, rubbed with ash, stirred with sinew, with the things we said to each other, and how we stood when we said them. Knife in hand, she scrapes these together with tiger maple and red cedar, the timbers of our 100-year-old argument, tree roots, earth, and gristle, the bruised dark words we slung around each other's necks. Sorry, turn that off. The crying alone, a chromium black silence of being at odds. Only purple monkshood now, sister of nightshade, blooms in the garden, laudanum for our tea, yawning, the queen's fading no matter what we do to keep her up nights. She's the sweet, unmanageable creature who steals in splintered prisms from behind our eyelids. Moonlight through July's open door, indigo and alabaster, lilies. From nearby woods, deer sniffed out these summer buds, cadmium and ochre heaven, and dared one stalk, then another. Behind tonight's hidden moon, the worlds of filament, a shell, a tiny yes in the sanctuary of roses. As when this afternoon you slept beside me, curtains drawn, hushed blood and cinder. The queen hoards her dirty palette of sienna and umber, mutters a few alto notes, from 2 drops despair to 3 parts river water. Your hazel eyes, light, and the dream of light, a rock-strewn shoreline, foam. I am married to the king of salvage. Anything that you want to find, he is your guy. And the older and the farther away it is, the better. So when we found this house, of course, it soon filled up with all kinds of things, including what's in this poem, salvage. When you got a deal on that reclaimed spiral staircase, no one could stop you from bolting it to the roof of our new fixer-upper. White metal metaphor or incentive, Day's neighbors stop to ask, what does it mean? Maybe the sky's unfinished, I say, and continue digging up the sad lawn to begin a garden. This morning, taking down a dying elm, we unearthed granite posts, chunks of asphalt. The guy working the cat laughs. No one told you? For years, this was a road construction dump site. A few junk skiffs, probably in there too. Most afternoons, tired from making ourselves over, we lean on pickaxes, watch a deer and her fawn forage the swale for elderberries. They don't care what anything was before or need some resurrection to navigate the meanders of a life. Maybe in this rubble, we'll unearth a lodestar, a gazetteer, or oakum from some lost caravel. Or maybe tonight, as we dream under this white-masted roof, the blind stars will unmoor and drift apart above us. Now the cat guy's back, wiping crumbs from lunch on a sleeve as he follows my line of sight to apple trees straggling the swale's edge. What's out there, I wonder aloud. He squints, considering. Can't say, not knowing, but if I was you, I'd let it lay where Jesus flung it. So now that I'm older, people don't know that I have albinism because I was born with this hair, but that comes into this next poem. How to drive a car. There's no sense in sugarcoating this. You can't, you won't. Because whatever you see with those albino but still blue because you got a speck of melanin eyes isn't enough. Because you will cool your heels at bus stops, hoof it through good or scary parts of town, and because going anywhere will take forever. But because you look okay, when you show your handicap pass, the bus driver snorts, "What's wrong with you? You another one of them jerking the system?" It isn't a question because you get the eye roll as your mid-explanation. But because in high school, you smoked the least dope of all your friends, you're the lookout for cops. And because you and your pals park in someone's dad's car on Mesa back roads, and because black and whites lurk in the scrub hoping to make their bus quota, one midnight after you lose your expensive contact lenses, and you're all so very high on red Lebanese, your buddies decide it's a perfect time for you to test drive their dad's new 1970 Oldsmobile Cutlass. Because as you scooch down to get a toe on the gas, only the high desert stars poke above the dash. And when the car lurches, everyone squeals, a few yuccas fly by, and nothing, God damn it, is impossible. Because you don't nosedive into the ditch, the cops snooze, and your chums are all laughing, but not at you. Just a couple more poems. Okay. I was trolling around and read this article about little kids being trained to do bull riding. So this poem, partly about that, it's called From the Narrow Place. Baby cowboys, ages 5 to 7, line up for the shoot, outfitted in cowlicks and stripy little boy shirts, but their eyes are the grave, hard eyes of old men. The Young Bull Riders World Finals offers an intro to the most dangerous organized sport in the world, says the newspaper write-up next to some grainy photos. These kids who've mutton busted their way up from calf riding aren't waiting for the easy life, just Jesus in the pinch and the black cow trough baptismal. They already know death isn't the worst that can happen. You'd think so, but so much else can narrow your arteries to something small and mean. My mom's eldest brother, who died this week after a lifetime of ugly, believed himself a good guy, omitting that he beat her every day of her childhood. Unless spooked, she carries her scars quiet as proud flesh. Under the inattentive eye of heaven, those boys ride or fall onto grassless prairie where work for their fathers and brothers dried up decades ago. But boys still grab the bull rope, free hand waving, eager to cover their bull for the 8 seconds required to counter the misfortune of their birth. My mom, unbroken, gazes out at the mountains, alone as a bull who's thrown its rider, and who paws packed sawdust, stoically eyeing a boy's shadow as it retreats into fairground floodlights, into the rodeo of another day. Last poem, Days of Awe. Okay, all the Jews among you will know what I'm talking about. But for everybody else, it'll make sense. If only I could pray once a year, for whose sins would I ask forgiveness? Lucky my faults haven't killed anyone yet. Lucky sadness hasn't broken me, guilty as I am of missing love's aim. If I could only speak once a day, would I spend my allotment of speech shouting out the horrors on the front page? How this country's in thrall to a madman that even a madman must question? Would that be what I would whisper to you in the dark? If I could write but once a week, would I make a grocery list of cowboy boots I shouldn't have bought? Or would I scribble my secrets on the six-sided cootie catcher I'd pass under a gum-riddled desk, my fingers trembling for your decades hence touch? If I could sing only once a month, would I choose a high-flung arpeggio of happiness? Or would that bluesy moan showering my moon garden with salt be more real, more precisely true? Should I save up one round note and loft it like a Chinese lantern until the sky swallows itself? If I could breathe only once, wouldn't I laugh? Wouldn't I burst with thirst for this life? Don't you forgive me. Thank you so much.
Unmuting. Oh, that is lovely. Thank you so much, Kate. It was lovely to hear you read them, and you have a very meditative voice. I love that, and the cadence in your poems is amazing. I noticed that I forgot to say something about using the chat section. So if people wanted to, ask questions of Kate, you can just go ahead and unmute, and please feel free to do that. A lot of us were writing down our favorite lines, Kate. And so somebody wrote down, if I could sing only once a month. And I think that's a beautiful meditation on the brevity and just taking that idea. If I only had one, week to live or 1 month to live, what would I do? I'd love that extended meditation on all the things that if I only had one chance to do, what would I do? That was lovely. Does anybody have questions for Kate? Or comments that you wanted to make about the poems? And feel free to unmute or ask in the chat section. Oh, I see somebody just did. Oh, George and Connie wrote, great work in reading, Kate. Can you see everybody, Connie? I mean, Kate, let me put you out of the spotlight.
I can't.
It's probably the bandwidth. If we put it to, if you go to grid view instead of speaker view up at the far right, that should give you everybody, because you've got a pretty packed room. So usually it's the far right.
Okay. I am I'm very visually limited, so and okay. I was planning using a different thing. Oh gosh.
Well, you've got
I see lots of black squares, so
that's probably people without the video.
I can't see it.
So you're getting a lot of comments, so I'll read them to you. They're in the chat section. Melinda said, wonderful, Kate. I loved every poem, so good to hear the car poem. And then, of course, Gary wrote, first reading ever with bull riding and cootie catchers, marry me. And then Laura wrote, loved hearing you read, Kate.
Oh, that's so kind.
Is that a remarriage proposal?
Yeah, no. Gary is my dear friend, and he almost knows how much trouble I might be to be married to, but maybe not quite.
He's not the king of
Rod's
self.
the only one who really knows how much trouble I am.
Hey, Gary, can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Gary, I just wanted to say that I will marry you.
Yeah. He's a bed hog, Gary. Good luck.
I'm a bed hog.
So,
Yeah.
There's Lulu.
if Kate, if you can see the chat section, Jean just wrote "Love Fireworks," one of my favorites in your book, and then Deb wanted you to know it's her writing from Gary's. I read the book in one shot last month and absolutely loved it. Very bad for my insomnia. Roger, I accept. So we have marriage proposals and acceptances.
All right. Well, as long as we got the love going. Yeah.
So I think,
Oh my
Kate,
goodness, it's so nice to see people far away.
that's one of the benefits, like you were saying, of you know, the pandemic, is we've been able to have readings with people we otherwise wouldn't have had a chance to be with. And so I've been immensely grateful. Would you be willing to talk a little bit about your process of writing and how you edit, and just kind of your approach? Because I think we're always curious about that.
Well, I'm laughing because Melinda, who's one of the triumvirate of this wonderful poetry group that I'm in, knows that my process is largely, oh my God, I gotta write something because those guys are gonna read it, so I better hurry up. I take a long time.
Oh, look at that cat.
I take a long time to
Oh, sweetie.
work on things, and maybe because I'm a painter too, I take longer because I'm going back and forth between a couple of things, and I need space to
So sweet.
let things gel. I don't know if that answers your question about process.
Can I jump?
I think also, you know, your painting, if people haven't seen your paintings, go to her website. We actually, when I was doing some research, looking stuff up, I went to her website and then I said, can I have one of these for the cover of Redheaded Stepchild? Because they're simply amazing. Karen
really
asked,
honored.
oh, it's lovely. Kate, you're incredibly talented. Karen was asking specifically, did you write this collection with a theme in mind, or did you collect poems that you already had written? In essence, how did you put this particular collection together?
This collection took almost 7 years, and I just let things arise. There were a lot of things came up with in my family during that time. Part of this book deals with my stepdaughter's difficulties with addiction and how close and what a beloved friend my stepdaughter's mother became in that process. There's a lot of stuff that came up about aging, my own, other people, people in the families. So, this book was really an accrual of things over those years. And then I shaped it by choosing the poems that I had that seemed to fit together. And a lot of poems didn't go in it, and they're still hanging around looking for their spot. So I don't tend to, I'm always thinking, oh, I'll do a collection based on X, but that never works out. It's more through the back door. It's more organic. It's more just a slow process of accrual. Everything in my work is really about time. So, if there's a theme, that's probably it.
That's lovely. That made me think about the interaction of poetry and painting and how those two might play or interplay with each other, like taking breaks with writing and then doing something that's very nonverbal, but has the same kind of associative elements and the same kind of one thing builds on another, and following with that that intuitive way of approaching creativity is what it sounds like you are describing to some extent.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I really appreciate about visual art is that I get a break from a certain amount of my own mind. It's a different kind of language, and the self-awareness of being with making visual art is in some ways quieter. In some ways it's just different, but it's helpful for poems mostly because I get a break from a certain part of myself that is always talking and thinking. And too much of that, blots out the ability to really make poems either, because it's too much the top of the ocean, all the waves just moving around. So I need that break so that I can really start to feel maybe what poems want to be.
Oh, I love that image. Jean wanted to add that, your poems are time and place, as that's kind of thematically what she sees. Jean, did you have a question with that? You can unmute and speak if you want to.
No question, but I just loved, as a person who has visited the West a lot and lived in New England, that balance between them and how using place to reflect an inner state too. It was really, I loved that in the book as a whole.
Thank you, Jean. Yeah.
Thank you, Jean. Does anybody have a question? Feel free to either put it in the chat section, I'm trying to keep up with that, or to just unmute and ask, because we have Kate right here. And I have written down for open mic, just to let people know so far, I have Jojo, John, Karen, and Roger. So if I've missed you, please let me know you can raise your hand, or just put something in chat, or let me know.
I have a question. Yeah.
Jump in.
Oh, Kate, there's all this like references to domestic violence, sort of like it's out there and it's muted and it's sort of, I'm wondering, did your mother, was she abused by your father? Like, is that the foundation for some of this stuff, or is it more like general, where like when you grew up, there was a lot of that happening?
It's not a piece of this book, but my mother had a pretty tough childhood. The landscape of domestic violence is, it's pretty universal. I think, a careful reading of this book in terms, my father, he had some big problems and was sometimes very nice, but not always nice to the women in the family, meaning me and my mom. So yeah, that's an undercurrent in there. That's for sure in there.
Thank you for that question and that input. I just saw another question that Karen had for you. Kate, are there any literary journals that you are particularly fond of that you are a big fan of?
Oh my gosh, there's so many journals that I don't even know about. I mean, oh, now I'm trying to think. My mind's a blur because I was so anxious. I love Nimrod. I like Superstition Review that comes out of Arizona State. You know, I mean, in terms of like little school ones. You know, I regret that I am not as well read in, I mean, the proliferation of journals is amazing right now. And there's just so many, like Redheaded Stepchild, that I have not discovered till like now. So
Yay, but you know about us.
you know, I'm always on the lookout for new goodies to read.
And this kind of dovetails, this question kind of dovetails on that one. John wanted to know, what have you been reading during the shutdown? You know, is there any book that you've been turning to recently? Poetry or non-poetry?
Well, for poetry, I've been reading Mary Ruefle's latest book, and Ocean Wong's his first book of poems, because I just read his memoir.
Yeah.
And those are just, they're just stunning. They're so stunning. I mean, his book is so stunning that I have to just read like one poem and nothing else on the poems for 2 days, because it's just, I want it to completely soak in at a deep level. You know, one of the gifts of insomnia is that I'm up in the middle of the night reading all kinds of things. So that's wonderful, as my friend Ellen can attest.
Yeah, I think Ellen was one talking about your book isn't good for insomnia. But, you know, I would argue that it's nice to have a book when you do have insomnia, and that's a gift, you know, one of the gifts of insomnia. I think that's a good way to look at it. Thank you, Kate. That's awesome. And so if you ever have rejections, you know where to send it. Redheaded Stepchild.
Oh, you know, I'm so terrible about sending out poems. I'm so terrible. I love the making of things. I hate sending things out. I hate it. So I have to just like force myself to do it. And I don't do it very often, so.
It does feel like a very different. Yeah, that feels like work, whereas writing feels like pleasure. I get that.
Well, even when writing is work, as it often is, and even when things turn to shit, as they have to do, for me, it's the whole process still feels like mine. And sending things out, I'm always thinking to myself, well, I could use this piece of time to do all that, or I could make some stuff. And, you know, I almost always want to make the stuff, and I almost never want to spend the time doing something else. I have to be better about it. That's part of 7 years to get this book out, is that I didn't want to send anything out.
Really understand. So I think what we'll do, is it okay if I do a share screen real quick and I put up your website so that everybody has access to it, if they haven't already been there? And this is actually, so can y'all see it now? Kate, can you see?
There's not.
Yes, I can see it.
Could you talk about this painting?
Would I talk about the painting? The last few years I've been working a lot in cold wax and oil, and my interest in that is, you know, I can't do encaustic because you need better ventilation than I have, but I really am attracted to the idea of layering and of revealing and concealing, you know, both in poems and in art making.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
And in the kinds of changes that accrue over time as you're working on a piece and building it up in layers, which these media are, you know, really a felicitous match for that kind of obsession.
Mhm.
This painting, something that had under layers of paintings, and then I scraped some of it away and went over it and over it. So, you know, that's part of my process with painting, and also, you know, completely besotted with color. I see pretty poorly. I'm, you know, legally blind. So I'm not a photorealist at all. I have no idea what you guys see. My husband's always telling me about things that are out there, and I think he's making it all up, frankly. Just joking. So
I can understand that. I remember when I got glasses in 5th grade and I had never realized that trees had individual leaves. I always thought they were like green clouds. So, you know, vision and how we see the world is definitely affects how we interpret things. And Kieran has a question about how do you divide your time between writing and art making?
very poorly. They feel like they're, you know, they're two cats that are nagging me for attention. You know, plus, like, I mean, I have a job. There's no really clear or even way to talk about that. I'm always thinking about both of them. It's kind of, if there's a writing project I'm in the middle of, you know, then it gets more time for a while. And then I'll go be with art for a while. I can't just do them both at once. I need a little room between them so that I can think those different thoughts. Art takes a little longer in terms of, you know, I need time to make, I need time to clean up the mess I make, whereas with poems, I can just shove all the stuff, turn off the computer. So if I only have a little time, I might be writing. But if I have a little more time, I'm getting out the paint and making a big old mess.
That's awesome. Thank you. I love how you describe that. And I that really makes sense to me. My mother was a visual artist, and the paints you had to lug around. And I think that's part of the reason why I chose writing, because it's just a, you know, pen and paper or a computer.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody have any other questions? I don't want to miss anything. I don't see anything in the chat section.
I just wanted to ask, you read one of your how-to poems this evening, and you have some other ones in your book, and you had just said that you never felt successful when you set out, oh, I'm going to write, you know, make a manuscript or poems about this. I wondered, since those all have that same premise, you know, how to drive a car, how to pack a U-Haul, whether you did that with a deliberate intention, or did they just evolve that way? Or I like that as a premise.
I had one poem in the manuscript that was a how-to poem, and I took it to a manuscript workshop. And, you know, one of the pieces of feedback that Matthew Dickman gave me was that, you know, because there's so much narrative in this and so many characters, that I needed to have something that was kind of red thread that could potentially hold all those pieces together on a more external level. I don't know if I'm saying that very well, but, you know, I created all of those other how-to poems thinking about the different pieces of the kinds of narrative that were in the manuscript already and trying to bring out certain things so that those could, you know, help the manuscript cohere. So those were a very late addition.
And I think that is helpful when people are thinking in terms of creating collection, is like the kinds of questions you might ask or how you might weave something else in there that kind of draws different images together. So that's helpful. And then also how having feedback oftentimes allows us to reapproach a poem and maybe ask or change or alter in a way that, you know, broadens the whole experience. The how-to poems are really amazing. Did anybody else have questions, or we can move to open mic? All right. Okay, so I will take you off the spotlight, give you a break, Kate. Thank you so very much. I think people probably want to clap one more time and say thank you. Someone sort of mute so you get the sign language clap. All right.
Thank you so much. This is such a cool thing.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I was so looking forward to meeting you.
Great to meet you and your fabulous hair. I mean, let's just be shown here. That's
Thank you.
amazing.
I've been calling it a pandemic purple, but it's also purple for epilepsy awareness. My youngest has epilepsy. So I told her I would do my hair purple, and she decided to do green. I have JoJo written down as our first reader, so there you go.
I just want to say first that that art piece was magnificent, and I want it. And if I was rich, I'd buy it and stick it right on my wall. It was absolutely like it was stunning, and it just blew me away. And now that's all I'm going to think about the rest of the night. And I'm going to have to find the rest of your artwork and poem too. But that art piece, it was yeah, it took my breath away. It was magnificent. All right,
Well,
so there's a little backstory to this poem. Me and Megan Merchant, we've decided to send pictures to each other. So I send her a picture and she writes about it, and she sends me a picture and I write about it. And so this poem is from our second pictures. And it was, so the picture was of two people with like cloth bags over their head, and they were like, it looks like they're kissing. And so, and also there's dashes and between some words and asterisks between the stanzas to force make you read slowly, like if you were to read it, because you'll understand. So I'm gonna read the poem. Loving becomes an execution. It is complicated. Our statues of flesh, still living in a memory where yesteryear humanity became obsolete, a plague, formed touch into extinction, love into death. We regress into routine, the loneliness non-existent if we secretly wear safely cloth bags and held breath and just the faintest kiss, quick, then step away. We live in the shadows of a dying kind, of homebodies, of fear of leaving, with distance, with pauses, before footsteps, and knowing touch becomes two funerals, multiple griefs, embers and ash and bones, teeth quiet in the warmth of the crematorium, dead, no longer buried, the ground too full of rotting carcass, mass graves have become landmarks, smoke from burning flesh, our prayers, our stories, our reminders, even inside our walls, we die.
Wow, thank you, Jojo. Wow.
Well, thank you. And can I say one more little thing? And the reason I put the dashes in there to slow it down is because the poem's about not touching and being cautious and slow. So,
Mhm.
and that's why there was those pauses and moments. And all right, sorry.
Thank you. Oh, no worries. And I knew you would like her artwork. There's so much more up there that you'll enjoy. And I wanted to say something real quick because I saw in the chat section, Jean, you had a comment that you said for Kate is you said, thank you. Interesting that those poems were late to the collection when they read like the bones. And then I did not want to miss Ellen saying, hooray for Kate, a gift to the world. And I would agree with that. I have John next. JJ, let me see if I can find you and ask you to unmute. If you say something, you should come up.
Yes. Hi. Thanks. I've been spending a lot of time during the lockdown overwalking my dog. So this is a poem dedicated to dogs. Running the path at the Brunswick Forest Dog Park. It is early, the sun's up, but the heat's still down as I plod along, running with a 25-pound internalized pack strapped inside my middle. Turkey vultures, sensing a potential payday, circle above, then a light in the forest trees along the border, and wait, betting on time. Around me, the morning picks up. A carpentry crew at the new build across the street begins pounding the day away. Landscapers armed with edgers, trimmers, blowers are already at it, ruining any hope of silence. Dogs begin walking along my route, dogs on their way to their unleashed but caged freedom. As I pass, I warn the owners so they might tighten their hold. The dogs may sense some large but wounded prey, namely me, which could be worth the effort. Small dogs are the worst. I know because my dog, Pirate, is a small dog. Bark, bark, bark. Yap, yap, yap. Bark, bark. Only 2,500 more yaps. I mean steps. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Only 2,500 more yaps. Karen, I have you next. If you want to unmute and say something, we will have you up.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So this is a poem. Oh, wow, I actually write it 2 years ago. So I wanted to share it tonight because it is racking up some rejections. Yeah, so I feel bad for it, but I still like it. This is a borrowed anatomy. Prying the wooden lid off of night, open from inside its stillness, you scratch against the grain to haul the crispy shell of yourself, your rigid exoskeleton, into a stabbing splinter of incandescent, of compact fluorescent, of halogen light, of whatever light you must endure passing through to take in a single stolen drop of water from the house cat's bowl, having sniffed this artificial light long enough to know to embrace return, to embrace the dark anatomy of you. A cockroach can live a week without its head. It breathes through little holes in each segment of its body. Without a head, it's without a mouth.
I like it.
Thank you.
My internet seems to be having issues. Can you hear me still, Karen?
Well, that's always fun when she gets booted.
Oh, we lost Malika.
Yeah.
She got
Oh, no,
booted.
she's back.
Yeah, I was going to say, sorry about that, but I got booted somehow, and that's never happened before. So sorry about that, Karen. I was enjoying the poem, and then I realized she's frozen and it came up. So I apologize. Did we lose everybody?
No,
Oh, good. Oh, good. We have
just you.
just me. Awesome. Sorry about that. We have a storm rolling in. We've had storms, you know, in North Carolina. Roger, I have you written down next for open mic. So if you say something, it should bring us to you or you to us. Okay, I don't see Roger up there. So why don't we go to Melinda and then we'll come back in case Roger got booted when I got booted. Melinda, do you mind saying something?
Hey, Kate. Hey. This is like
Oh, it's so sweet to see you, honey.
Kate, and we've been exchanging poems for 54 months. We've been exchanging poems since I've moved to North Carolina.
We need to Zoom. I need to face again.
Okay. All right. Yes. Okay. My connection isn't so good either, so I better. But Kate's heard this poem before, so here we go.
Yay!
Stir and carry on, and the epigraph is from Mary Oliver. It's called, and it says, "He was, of course, a piece of the sky." Stir and carry on. Crows, then sparrows, the factory workers, donut makers, and retailers stir and carry on as the sun burns its way upward, dragging in winter's pale morning shades. Starlings murmur in a swoop to perch on lines and posts, 100 of them or more. What do they know? What are those invisible colors they see? My yellow dwarf star, leaning over the horizon, warms me by degrees. Our unspoken bond shows as my eyes flashed its flame I've carried since my time began, or when I laugh at a joke. Although we live 93 million miles from each other, when it sets, I hate it. Oh, the glass of wine helps to toast my trip into the sunset's darkness, but I still worry. I'm the candle holding to the wick and trusting in birds whose eyes full of sky pull me into the day.
Oh, Melinda, thank you so much.
It's got, yeah, it's like, I think Kate and Elizabeth were our little coven, right? We're a little witch group. And we help each other.
But I think that the community of writers is so critical to our art, you know, being able to have people that synergistically work with us or get our work or encourage and inspire us. So I'm glad that you got to do that. And 54 months, that's a huge commitment to have been doing it for that long.
Yep. Yep. We're on.
It's a fabulous thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So going
So
back to Roger, somebody put in chat that he's Galaxy Note Pro, but I still don't see him up here. So Roger, if you...
I see him. He's above you now. You moved too. He's it's all black and there's like a little fan. You can see his fan and then a little light.
He's muted. Let me see if I can ask him to unmute.
He just muted again.
Okay, so Roger, if you did want to read, now is the time, but if you don't, that's fine, no worries. Let me go back to see if I missed anything in chat, and then we will go ahead and call it. Thank you all so very much for being here, and Kate, thank you so much for letting us celebrate your new book with you and to hear you read. And to see some of your art.
Thank you so much for inviting And it's wonderful to meet all of you new people, all of you North Carolina poets. That's the place to be. And to see friends from close and far away. That's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that is the lovely part of it. Well, thank y'all. Be well, and I'll see you next week. And Kate, I will send you a message with the link for the YouTube and then also anything in the chat section. Okay?
Great. Very much.
Bye.
Look forward
Bye.
to seeing you again. Bye for now.